What's up, guys? We are back with another episode of Revealed. Today we are back on site at our Somerville project, and we're going to walk you through the installation of this suspended metal cabinet behind me. This thing weighs close to 1,000 pounds, and it is suspended from the ceiling in just one spot and anchored to the wall in just one spot. Let's walk through how we did that. In a previous episode, we were in the shop and we showed you exactly how we were fabricating this cabinet and the dry fit before all of the pieces were finished. In order to get this cabinet installed, we had to put all of these pieces together in a very specific order. Due to the size of a lot of these pieces, we broke all the cabinetry down into individual flat pieces so that our finisher could take care of painting everything. We sent out the entire metal surround to the powder coater in one piece. Same thing with the support beam that actually runs through the middle. We also had all of the screws and bolts powder coated as well, so no matter what angle you're looking at this cabinet from, if you were to see a fastener, it blends right in because it is the same powder coated finish. So once we brought all of the pieces on site, we had to assemble all of the cases. Prior to installing them in the metal surround, we left the doors off. We didn't need to keep those on. It helped save some weight and gave us some additional areas to grab onto when putting these cases into the metal surround. We did have to leave a small gap, about a 30-second all around that cabinet, so that we could slide the wooden cabinet in the metal surround. We didn't want to have any light gaps coming through the void between the metal surround and the wood cabinet, so we actually used a strip of foam that went around the inner perimeter of the metal surround. We did this on both sides of the opening since both sides are visible, and in each bay. One of the other good things about using the foam was that it did expand, right? So our gap is only about a 30-second, and if it did increase, let's say to a 16th, the foam would expand and fill that gap, so you'd have a solid strip going all the way through. The trouble with that though is the foam was thicker, and we wouldn't be able to just slide that cabinet in due to the tight tolerances. It would have ripped the foam and the adhesive right off from the inside of that metal case. So what we ended up doing was using a thin piece of veneer around all four sides of the interior of that metal surround so that we could slide the case in as one piece, using the veneer to compress the foam into the size that we needed it to be to get that case to slip in. Once it was in place, we could slide that veneer right out of there, allowing that foam to expand, fill the gap, and then we could secure our cabinet right in place. So one of the difficult things about getting this cabinet into place, it is so large, it weighs about 1,000 pounds. It's a little over 10 feet long, and it goes up against the wall. The trouble is, wall side receives this beam that goes all the way through the cabinet, so we would need 20 feet in total to slide that beam in and through to the other side. If we put our cabinet, say, on the countertop or even close, we wouldn't have the distance required to slide that beam in. So once we had all of those cases slid into the metal surround, we had that long support beam slid in through the side. We still had the difficulty of lifting up one side of this entire case and pivoting it over roughly into place. The plan was to hoist this entire thing up. We were able to get 2 material lifts that we could put on either side of this, built a cradle for in between, and hoisted the cabinet up. In order to do that, we had to get the cradle under the case that was now in place. We were able to lift up that case, slide the cradle underneath, bring the hoists up into the cradle, and then raise the cabinet right up into place. This ended up working out extremely well. None of us really had to lift a whole bunch of weight, causing any injury, and we're able to rely heavily on those lifts to do their job. Once we had this cabinet up into place, we were able to kind of shimmy it into its final resting position, get those bolts through the plates in the post in the ceiling, down through the cabinet, secure them into place there, move over to the wall side, mount those bolts right through the access panel that we have on the wall side, and get that side secure as well. We're able to get those lifts right out of the way. So from there, we were able to make any final adjustments that we needed to make to get this level and plumb, and then get everything out of the way so we could start installing the final touches, which would be the doors. So first you'll see this solid steel case. So this was actually made for us by our friend Rich at Costa Fabrications. Flawless job as usual. This is larger than a typical sheet, so he had to do some work in order to get this thing built for us. Everything is a seamless weld, powder coated everything, If you take a close look in here, you can actually see the gasket that we used to keep that gap closed up. And as we kind of come around through here, you can see the two-tone, or maybe even three-tone if you want to count this black of the cabinetry. So we're tying in a bunch of different elements here. A lot of the dining room and the entryway is all white oak. The kitchen is white. So this cabinet here is kind of suspended in between the dining room and the kitchen. So we're bringing elements of that dining room, the white oak, into the kitchen, which is the white from above. Instead of having any kind of hardware up on these doors, we opted to do an integrated pull, which works out very nicely in this application. So up here inside, you can see the plate and post that support this entire cabinet. During the design phase, we had a little bit of back and forth about what this was going to look like. We had discussed putting a cover in there so you never saw any of this, but it was decided to kind of leave it as this kind of visible architectural type piece, and it actually came out quite nice, and we left it exposed. So as we come through, you can see everything kind of matches. You have these open cabinets that are accessible from both the kitchen and the dining side. On the inside here, you're only accessible from the kitchen side. On the back side, it's just the oak panels. And as we come through here, we do have a dead corner. We'll talk about that here in 1 second, but it changes a little bit on the range wall itself. Here we're gonna have the hood for the cooktop. So we needed to cover up what that hood insert was gonna look like. So there is a finished panel that's gonna go here. We carried that across with these doors on the adjacent cabinet. And then we do have some more panels to hide the rest of the ductwork up in here. And we'll get to making adjustments and finishing up this install tomorrow. But let's loop around to the backside and show you something over there. We do have just these solid white oak panels. It matches everything else, all of the other millwork in this side of the dining room, as well as the entryway. So when you're walking through that front door, you're just met with all consistent rift sawn white oak coming all the way down. And in that dead corner that I mentioned, it's not accessible from the kitchen side, but over here on the dining side, why would we leave it just a dead corner? So puts on some touch latches, fill them with some panels. And furthermore, this corner here, we have this access panel cover to go up in that place. And this is where we bolted it to the wall. So you can see our connection points there on the inside, as well as the post up in the ceiling. So as a whole, this piece here was something that weighed on each of us individually. We were all a bit worried, kind of unsure exactly what was gonna happen here. At the end of the day, me, Ian, and James were able to take a step back and admire the work that we did and really appreciate the opportunity to do something so unique, but also the ability of each person on our team and how we're able to just rely on one another and bounce creative ideas off of each other. Appreciate you stopping by, checking out this episode. I know it's been a little bit since we've posted, especially about this particular cabinet. It has been sitting in our shop, taking up a lot of room for a while, so I know the boys are excited to have it out and free up some much needed space. So stay tuned for another upcoming video about this project where we talk about the installation of that panel right over there. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.